One of your chapters talks about sex, good sex, and sacred sex. Can you take us through the different levels and how they're differentiated?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's kind of the way I describe it, a bit whimsically, I admit, is it's a cumulative course. To get to good sex, you got to be good at plain old sex. And to get to sacred sex, you got to be good at good sex. So what do I mean by those things? Well, sex, plain old sex is, look, whatever you think it is. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to involve genitals necessarily, but it is some kind of intimate physical connection you're having with another human being. Actually, I shouldn't even say that because you can have sex by yourself as well. So plain old sex is all about that. And the essential skills of plain old sex are basic anatomy and basic physiology. Anatomy is what's where, and physiology is what does what, right? So you kind of get a sense of knowing your own body, and if you're having sex with another person, knowing their body, right? Getting a sense of what works there. So that's all I mean by plain old sex. Some of the things that get in the way of plain old sex are things like trauma reactions. If somebody has been sexually abused, it can be very difficult to have plain old sex even with someone who is safe and that they love and want to connect with, because they're being triggered. And so that just to get over some of the problems of plain old sex often involves some degree of therapy, as to get past trauma and stuff like that. How do you get from plain old sex to good sex? Well, plain old sex is connecting intimately with someone, or connecting physically in a deep way or intimate way with someone. Good sex is when you are connecting on an intimate level, which is to say intimate in that sense of being fully present and honest with yourself and each other. So to go from plain old sex to good sex often involves, of all things, being able to talk about it freely, being able to say what you like and don't like, being able to hear from your partner what they like and don't like, being able to hear things like that without freaking out or without being insulted or being insulting. All of those things are included among the skills necessary for good sex. So good sex is when it has become intimate. Sacred sex is when you've taken it to another level. So you're ready for sacred sex when you know how to have good sex, because that means that you're fully present. And then what makes it sacred is the consciousness that it's not just about you and not just about the two of you. It's a connection to forces much greater than yourself. Now, Western religious folks would say it's a connection to God. People who are into Tantra would talk about, connections to the sort of forces of the universe. Those things are all inherent in the notion of sacred sex. To experience sacred sex, you have to really, it's more about the sacred than it is about the sex. But sex is very amenable to that level of connection with the universe at large because the forces involved are so overwhelming. Especially when you're having good sex. It's like it takes you right out of yourself. So if you want to learn more about those, indeed, as you mentioned in your question, I do have a chapter on that in my book, Reigniting the Spark. And I also have some videos on that on my website as well. Check out my books, podcast, blog, and videos at my website, brucechalmer.com. If you'd like to make an appointment for couples therapy, visit brucechalmer.com and drop me a line. I'll get back to you right away.